I'm shooting coach Mike Dunn, and welcome to How to Shoot a Basketball. Okay, so today we are going to talk about creating the perfect arc. It's probably one of the biggest questions I get. Mike, how do I get consistent arc on my shot? And there's a really good way to show this from a picture form, which you can see here. And I'm going to try my best to explain this as well as explain how we create it, okay? What I tell every player when we're learning how to move the basketball is this ball by itself, right, produces no energy, right? By itself, this ball can't go from the ground into the basket. That's just not something that's going to happen, right? So what we have to do is we have to see ourselves as the energy creators. I talk about it a lot in my different training modules, but say if there's one thing that I need players to understand, it's that the way that we create energy is first and foremost in terms of importance. Because if we can't create the energy to get the ball to the basket, it doesn't matter how good our guide hand is, it doesn't matter how good our stacking is, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to matter if we can't even get the ball to the hoop, right? So how we create energy is extremely important. And with that being said, we want to be able to create it in the most efficient way possible. So if you were to put this ball on the floor, like you see in the picture next to me, I would ask you, okay, what's the quickest way for this ball to get to the front of the rim? You would draw that straight line to the basket. Now, obviously, we know that the ball has to go up in order to go in. So then you would say, well, what would be the second most efficient way so the ball would still have a chance to go in? And that's where you'd like to see that little arch happen there, right? What we have to do as shooters is try to move the ball along that kind of predetermined perfect arc as much as we want, as much as we possibly can, right? How do we do that? This is the way that I like for players to think about it. If I set myself up here and I'm putting this ball in what we call our one position, by me keeping this ball relatively connected to my body, I'm not saying it has to be in here, right? And it's obviously not going to be extended all the way from my body. And I'll show you why here in a second. If I keep this ball close here, right, I form this angle, shoulder to elbow to wrist, hands loaded. If I were to imagine an arc, that same arc that's drawn on the picture, but now it's in my hands and that arc going from the basketball into the basket, my objective would be to move the ball along that arc as much as possible until I finally push through. The more I can kind of stay and keep this ball on that imaginary path, the more likely my ball is not going to change directions, right? That's going to be the most efficient path possible. Now, the only way we can take advantage of this path, right, that's going to allow us to take advantage of how we create energy best is by ensuring that we still sequence correctly, which we start to let that ball move. So we got to remember there's that line coming out of the ball and then going to the basket. I'm moving it along the line, along the line, along the line. I may drift back a little bit. I'm human. I'm not a robot. And then eventually that ball stays in front and I'm able to push through to the basket. This can only be done, right, if we let that ball move first from a sequencing standpoint, and then we really think about moving the ball in one direction as much as possible. The further that ball gets from my body, right, if that arc was then from the basketball to the hoop, I would have to pull the ball off of that line to the point it came back to my two, and then it would have to find the line again. The more you divert from that line, the harder it is to get the desired arc that you want. You can still get it, right, but it's going to take longer and there's definitely more variability in it, right? This is why we like to start with that ball rather connected, connect the hands, think about the imaginary arc going from ball into the basket, and move that ball in one direction as much as possible. Keep shooting.